channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. We've transitioned now from the position of the running back to the position of QBs. Now, everyone tells you to wait on QBs, right? They're always going to be there in the 6th or 7th round. You pick your position players first, and then you pick your QBs. The question remains, however, which QBs should you pick if you're kind of in desperation mode? If all the good QBs are gone, and you're kind of left with a mix of Tier 2, Tier 3 guys, which of those guys do you select for your fantasy football team? And hopefully this segment helps, because a lot of these guys I don't necessarily see in either of these tiers. Some of these guys I think of as Tier 4 guys, mainly due to fate of circumstance, but still, you get the picture. However, these are the quarterbacks who are winning in terms of their strength of schedule and in terms of how they can view their schedule as a whole. Because these guys can quickly become stars. Some are already stars. And so, without further ado, let's jump right into the winners in terms of strength of schedule for the QB position. Now, the first guy on this list might surprise you. Coming back from an injury, certainly does not have the skill position talent that other quarterbacks on this list will have, and maybe even that some of the losers at the QB position, which we'll get into later, have. But he has a new number 1 receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. He has Trey McBride at the tight end position, and most of these guys are fantastic role players. So I really think this guy definitely has something going for him, and that is Kyler Murray. Wait, there we go. That's the picture of Kyler Murray that we want. Now, a lot has to happen. A, he has to come back fully fit and ready for any test thrown his way. And B, he has to develop quickly a rapport with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the rest of his receiving core. He has to figure out which of the guys he wants to rely upon outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., because a lot of attention is going to fall on Marvin Harrison Jr. by opposing defenses. But still, the top 12 schedule, favorable early and late, against the Patriots, Panthers, and Rams from weeks 15 to 17. And in the NFC West, who knows? It's a very competitive division. You can pick up a couple divisional wins. And so, much like Kenneth Walker in Seattle playing the AFC East, you can pick up a couple of wins there. And I think that the Cardinals are a team that's going to be predicated on shootouts, and then that Kyler Murray definitely has the talent to keep his team in a lot of games. He did it in the past with much better receiving cores, mind you, but still, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is as good as people truly think he is, then I think he's going to be one of the better receivers that Kyler Murray has worked with. And so, Kyler Murray is going to take advantage of the early state of games to get his team comfortable, and then the latter half of the season, who knows? This is a team that could be potentially surprising, fighting for a playoff berth. That's how versatile I think the NFC West is going to be. That's how volatile I think the entirety of the NFC is going to be. I think there's a place for the Cardinals in the reckoning here. And if Kyler Murray can come back fully fit and really rejuvenate this skill position group, this is a dangerous Arizona Cardinals team, and I wouldn't want to be facing this offense in the early to latter stages of the season. Then, another guy in the NFC West who definitely is becoming more comfortable as a fantasy QB. I'm going to talk about him a little later in the week in terms of fantasy football, and that is Brock Purdy. Top 5 schedule, top 10 for fantasy playoffs, because as we all know, the fantasy playoffs come from weeks 15 to 17 in the league. He plays the AFC East, like we said, with all of these NFC West teams that we've talked about. And I really think Brock Purdy has a lot of chances to shine. Last year, he kind of struggled in prime time, especially that game against the Ravens, but that was without all the weapons at his disposal. As we all know, he without a doubt, has the best weapons at his disposal of any QB, and that is why I think a lot of people should cover him more. I myself am still skeptical of Brock Purdy because I still think of him as a system QB. I still think of him as fitting perfectly into what the 49ers want to run because of the weapons they have. You don't necessarily have to be a solid quarterback to really get the ball to all these weapons, but nevertheless, Brock Purdy has proven himself as someone that the 49ers can rely upon, and that fantasy football managers can rely upon. 2 games in Brock Purdy's schedule where a lot of people will have his eyes on him. The Week 7 matchup against the Chiefs and the Week 8 matchup against the Cowboys. Those are the 2 prime time games that Brock Purdy will have to really prove himself and cement himself as a guy who can trust. Outside of that, I think Brock Purdy is easy sledding. That being said, maybe the trade rumors that have been surrounding that skill position group, especially with Brandon Ayuk, could kind of add some tension to this skill position group. But still, Brock Purdy is a guy who I believe can keep this group on schedule and really help them achieve their goals. And no matter what you think of Brock Purdy, he's always a guy you should consider for as long as those weapons stay in San Fran. Because if no one's leaving, then this team is set. And so I can't necessarily say much more about how solid of a position Brock Purdy is in for any QB in the league. And coming up next, our first rookie that we're talking about, who finds himself in a much better situation than many rookie quarterbacks coming into the league find themselves in Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb, obviously the number 1 overall pick, perhaps one of the better prospects out of college since, say, Trevor Lawrence. So he has that going for them. And to top it all off, he actually has a solid 3-headed monster at the wide receiver positions. He has DJ Moore, who's been in Chicago for quite some time. He's have Keenan Allen now, a veteran wide receiver in this league coming over from the Chargers, and now a fellow rookie in Roman Dunze that he can rely upon. So he's not short of talent in his offense. That deep core is really going to lead him to early success. The top 10 ranking in terms of schedule. Weeks 4 through 8 is where he gets the cupcakes in his schedule. Against the Panthers, the Jags, the Commanders, the Cards, and the Patriots. And so he really has an opportunity to really grow into the season as a rookie. Maybe he starts off a bit rockier in the early stages of the season, but in the middle part of the season, when he has an opportunity to play some teams that aren't going to be as good, he's going to be someone who is going to certainly have his chances to shine. Now, with that being said, a lot of the times projects like this can falter early on. And in the NFC North is less margin for error. So I'm really looking out for him in divisional games for Caleb Williams to really find growth. Because the Lions are a well-rounded team. The Packers are going to be challenging them as well. So at the end of the day, Caleb Williams really has to rely upon his receivers to get going. If he builds that trust, then I think the schedule is going to be a breeze for him. If he wins those chunk games in the middle of his season, Panthers, Jags, Commanders, Cardinals, Patriots, then I think that the Bears team is going to shock some people. I think this Bears team can sneak into the playoffs, to be honest with you. But it all comes down to how Caleb Williams grows and improves in his rookie season. And then, for a shocker of a last guy on this list, a guy who I actually like certain traits in his game, but his overall game and the team that he's on isn't necessarily something that's really hopeful. Isn't necessarily something that I see working out. And that, of course, is Derek Carr. And the reason why I like Derek Carr is that he has one of the more underrated deep balls in the league. But that does not an all-around solid QB make. And on a Saints team that's always going to be in competitive games, especially in the NFC South, as all four teams believe they have a shot. Well, maybe not the Panthers outside of this division. I don't necessarily see Carr being someone who I will rely upon. That being said, though, it's an easy schedule. He gets the Panthers twice this year because of the fact they're in the same division. And who knows what the other NFC South teams look like. The Falcons, on paper, look the best team in the NFC South and look like they've separated themselves a little bit. But that's just on paper. Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles injury. So he might not be the same quarterback he was in Minnesota. And then you look at the Bucs, they lose Dave Canales, who was really the architect of the big season from Baker Mayfield. So as we go through this list, it kind of opens up for the Saints. But I'm not saying Carr's the best part of the Saints. He's certainly not going to be the reason that if they are to make a run at the NFC South and win the division, or say, I don't think he's going to be the reason why. Out of all these guys, I feel like he's the one who could be kind of slated. I think in a super flex league, he works out a little bit more, where you can pick and choose your matchups. If, say, your QB1 is not in a good matchup, you feel like then maybe Carr's a guy who, if he's playing a NFC South team, can step in. So he's definitely someone who is going to cause a little controversy in terms of whether you pick him or not. But when I look at this slate, these are definitely some QBs who are interesting, and you guys might not have expected. You might not have expected both Kyler and Caleb on this list. Kyler, because A, he's coming off an ACL injury, and he might not be fully fit, and B, because, well, he's stepping into a wide receiver room where there's a lot of uncertainty outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. And you look at Caleb, well, he's a rookie quarterback. Some rookie quarterbacks are successful, some are not. So it's definitely a toss-up. He has a very good setup for him on offense, so we'll definitely have to see how he evolves that side of it. And then the biggest surprise of all is Derek Carr. But then you see the places where these teams are in good situations, where the Arizona Cardinals don't necessarily have to play the toughest of AFC divisions, where the NFC South is looking a little bit more open than people think. And that's where you can kind of see why these QBs can potentially find their footing. And so, while some of these guys may be unappealing to some, I think there might be a chance that you'll be looking at them when it's all said and done. But that should just about do it for this segment. Coming next, we look at the winners at the wide receiver position. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting guys here. We'll be back with that segment after the break.